They say tomorrow is a promise, but for me, it was a prison. Comfortable, familiar prison with walls built of good intentions and floors paved with wasted afternoons. It was a place where my greatest dreams went to sleep, always assured they would be woken on a day that never arrived. This is the story of how I found the key, not in a grand plan or a sudden burst of genius, but in a simple conversation. With a stranger on a park bench, a man who taught me the true currency of life. My name is Caleb, and for the longest time my world was a canvas of blank, intimidatingly white canvas. I had the soul of an artist. I could see the world in shades and hues others missed, the deep indigo of a twilight sky, the fiery ochre of a single autumn leaf, the gentle silver of rain on a window pane. My mind was a gallery of masterpieces that had yet to be created. My small apartment was cluttered with the tools of my dormant passion, pristine brushes that had never touched paint, tubes of color still sealed in their foil, and stacks of fresh canvases that stood like silent tombstones to my ambition. I was kind, people said. I was talented, my few friends insisted, but I was lazy, a fact I knew better than anyone. My greatest talent wasn't for painting, but for procrastination. Every morning I would wake with a spark of resolve. Today, I'd tell myself, brewing my coffee, today is the day I finally begin, but then the day would unfold. A friend would call, a new series would appear on a streaming service, or the sheer magnitude of starting would feel too heavy. And so, as the sun would set, I'd sigh and make the same tired promise to myself. The lullaby that soothed my guilt, tomorrow. I will definitely start tomorrow. This cycle continued for years. My youth began to feel like a distant memory, and the vibrant colors in my mind started to fade, replaced by a dull, persistent gray of regret. I was adrift in an ocean of tomorrows, slowly sinking under the weight of my own inaction. It was on one such gray afternoon, while I was sitting in a park, trying to escape the accusing silence of my empty studio, that my life was irrevocably changed. An old man sat down on the other end of my bench. He was frail, but carried an air of immense stillness, as if he were a stone in the middle of a rushing river. His eyes, a pale, cloudy blue, seemed to hold the wisdom of centuries. He didn't speak for a long time, and neither did I. The silence between us was comfortable, companionable. Finally he turned to me, a gentle smile creasing the corners of his eyes. "A heavy heart for such a beautiful day," he said, his voice like the rustling of dry leaves. I just shrugged, not wanting to burden a stranger with my pathetic story. But he seemed to understand anyway. From the deep pocket of his tweed coat, he produced a small, exquisitely crafted hourglass. The wood was dark and polished, and the glass was so clear it seemed almost liquid. The sand inside was a fine, shimmering gold. He held it in his palm, offering it for me to see. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he asked. I nodded, mesmerized. "Do you know what this truly is?" he continued, his gaze intense. "This is not just sand in a bottle, young man. Each grain that falls is a moment, a breath, a heartbeat, a choice. And once it passes from the top to the bottom, it can never be returned. It is gone forever." He gently turned the hourglass over. The golden sand began its silent, inexorable descent. I watched, captivated, as the tiny particles whispered from one chamber to the next. "We are all given a measure of this sand," the old man said softly, his eyes fixed on the falling grains. "Some more, some less. We cannot know the size of our own hourglass. We only know that the sand is always falling. People spend their money so carefully, saving and investing, yet they spend their moments, their precious grains of sand, as if they have an infinite supply. They trade them for idle distractions, for empty promises of tomorrow. But tomorrow is just a word for a place where nothing ever gets done." His words struck me with the force of a physical blow. I looked at the hourglass, and I didn't see sand anymore. I saw all the days I had wasted. Each grain was a sunrise I'd slept through, an idea I'd failed to sketch, a brushstroke I'd never made. I saw years of my life, a glittering pile of lost moments, collected in the bottom chamber of that small glass vessel. The weight of it all, the sheer crushing reality of my squandered time, made it hard to breathe. Who are you?" stammered, my voice barely a whisper. The old man smiled again, a sad, knowing smile. "My name is Kairos," he said. "I am simply a reminder that the perfect time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now." With that, he stood up, placed the hourglass on the bench beside me, and walked away, disappearing into the gentle haze of the late afternoon. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, the hourglass my only companion. The top chamber was nearly empty. I watched the last few golden grains tumble down, each one a final, silent accusation. When the last grain fell, a profound silence settled over me. It was the silence of a finished chapter, the silence of a closed door. But in that silence, I felt something new ignite, not the familiar, fleeting spark of morning resolve, but a deep, burning fire of urgency. I picked up the hourglass, its wood warm in my trembling hand, and I walked home. I didn't run. I walked with a purpose I hadn't felt in my entire life. That night, for the first time, I didn't say tomorrow. I walked into my studio, took a deep breath that smelled of dust and turpentine, and I picked up a piece of charcoal. My hand was stiff, my mind clumsy, but I drew. I sketched the old man, Kairos, his timeless eyes, and the hourglass in his palm. It wasn't perfect. It was rough and flawed, but it was real. It was a start. The next morning, I woke before the sun, not with a groan, but with a mission. I made my coffee and went straight to my easel. I squeezed a dollop of cerulean blue onto my palette, and as the brush touched the canvas, a jolt of life, of pure joy, ran through me. I was finally doing it. The prison of tomorrow had been unlocked, and the key was the simple, profound understanding that all I ever truly had was now. The days that followed were the hardest and most wonderful of my life. I fought against the ingrained habits of a lifetime. The temptation to delay, to take it easy, was a constant whisper in my ear. But every time I heard it, I would look at the little hourglass I kept on my workbench. I would watch the sand fall and remember Kairos's words. I poured every ounce of my being onto my canvases, painted the sunrise, the bustling city streets, the quiet moments of solitude. I painted my joy, my frustration, and my hope. My studio transformed from a mausoleum of broken promises into a sanctuary of creation filled with the vibrant chaos of a life being fully lived. Many years have passed since that day in the park. My hair is now streaked with silver, and my hands are permanently stained with the ghosts of 1,000 colors. The world knows me as a successful artist. My paintings hang in galleries I once only dreamed of visiting. My studio is large and bright, filled with light and finished works. But on a small, cluttered table next to my favorite easel sits a small, dark wood hourglass. It is my most prized possession. Young, aspiring artists often visit me, seeking advice. They ask about technique, about inspiration, about how to succeed. I show them my brushes and my paints, but then I always lead them to the hourglass. I tell them the story of a lazy young man and a wise old stranger named Kairos. Tell them that talent is a gift, but it is a useless one without the discipline of action. Dreams, I explain, are not brought to life by hope or by wishes, but by the relentless, day-by-day accumulation of moments, of tiny grains of sand, each one seized and used with purpose.
Ow.
For a dream is nothing more than a conversation with time, and it can only be realized when you finally stop saying tomorrow and learn to cherish the irreplaceable, unrepeatable, and infinitely precious beauty of today.